All right, we've got recording going. I don't know if Zoom has changed some kind of settings, but it's acting, I started last night, started acting really weird last night and really weird tonight. We'll see how it goes. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order of the Urban Renewal Agency Budget Committee at 6 o'clock. I'm chairing, keeping the meeting off until we have a nomination election for a chairperson. Establish a quorum. I will ask everybody to, starting with Ms. Sharp, ask them to say your name and just so we can confirm that we have a quorum, which we most certainly do.
Suzanne Sharp.
Councilor Harmon, would you just say your name, please?
Ava Harmon. Brian Reck.
Scott Whitmire.
Robert Campbell.
Valerie Sovereign. Judy Posse. Debbie Poland.
Rick Beasley. Bill Masella. Brady Widener.
From staff and Kim Longer from staff. Okay, we have a quorum. Does everybody know everybody? Do we need to do any introductions? Everybody knows everybody. Okay, then I guess we can go ahead and move forward to appointing your chairperson. So we just need a nomination. Mr. Gambino?
I'd like to nominate Valerie Sovereign as chair.
Okay. Second?
I'll second that.
Okay, does Ms. Sovereign take the nomination?
I will do it with thanks to Kathy for all the previous times she's done this.
Okay, we can vote on this, or if there's any other nominations? Okay, so we'll vote on this, all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Okay, Madam Chair?
All you. Okay, so I am basically going to just follow the agenda, which the first thing we need to do is to approve the minutes. I want to check and make sure everybody's had a chance to read them, and if you have any questions. Anybody have any questions or changes for the minutes from a year ago? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. How about a second?
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes from last year, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Pardon me, Chair, would everybody make sure that if you have one of those Lucent mics, that your mic is showing green, and everybody else, please keep your mics pulled towards you. Okay. That one does not.
Stop until someone is there.
Okay, so,
Ms. Chufo? Ms. Chufo? I'm right there.
oh. So before I turn this back over to Kim, to give us the message, I wanted to remind everybody that, we make sure that expenditures and revenues balance, which that's part of our mission. Happily, it looks like they do this year nicely. And then, you can ask questions and get clarifications, make recommendations for revisions, accept any revision, addition, or subtraction to change to another additional individual item must be approved by the majority of the group. Doesn't necessarily need to be a motion, but we can do a show of hands. So that's kind of the process for what we're going to go through. Next, we're going to have our budget message.
This is a shorter budget message. Normally, we're required to read the budget message, and since this is a short one, relatively short, I'll go ahead and read it. When we get to the city, we'll summarize that. The Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Agency is a separate municipal corporation responsible for administering and implementing the urban renewal plan in Depoe Bay's Urban Renewal District. The Mayor and City Council govern Depoe Bay's Urban Renewal Agency Board. The City Administrative Reporter serves as the agency manager of the Urban Renewal Agency. Sorry, I found a typo. Public Works, Planning, Administration, and Finance staff supports the urban renewal programs and projects. The proposed Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Agency annual budget has been prepared pursuant to Oregon local budget law and presents the recommendations of the budget officer based on the cooperative efforts of the city's management team. Urban renewal agencies are different from taxing districts in that they do not have permanent rates, and they raise revenue primarily through tax increment financing. When an urban renewal plan is created, the value of the property within its boundaries is locked in time or frozen. The agency then raises revenue in subsequent years from any revenue value growth above the frozen amount. This value growth is referred to as the increment. The tax rate used to calculate taxes imposed for the urban renewal plan is the consolidated tax rate for the taxing districts within the geographic boundaries of the plan, essentially within Depoe. These urban renewal taxes referred to as tax off the increment are calculated as the consolidated tax rate times the value of the increment. The agency will continue to collect tax increment funds until the plan ends within the 28-29 fiscal year, unless the urban renewal goes to the Senate. The purpose of the Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Agency is to administer the statutory tax increment revenues for funding of the goals and objectives of the Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Plan through designated projects within the urban renewal district. If you don't mind, I'll just say the agency. The agency began operating under the Oregon Urban Renewal Laws and the adopted Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Plan on March 20th, 1991. It's actually supposed to be split out. The Oregon Renewal started in 1901, but we started in 2008, I think. Right. So that was just something I neglected to put that detail in. The Urban Renewal Agency will be working on programs to carry out the goals and objectives of the Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Plan, which are to implement the downtown refinement plan, increase pedestrian safety, increase and improve public spaces, increase parking, improve repair infrastructure, water, sewer, streets, storm drains, utilities, and public facilities, encourage rehabilitation of existing buildings and substandard properties, and improve harbor facilities. The budget for the Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Agency was prepared in accordance with the current local budget law for urban renewal agencies, ORS Chapter 294. The agency's financial statements are prepared on a cash basis accounting and compliance with reviews of the Government Accounting Standards Board. While local budget laws allows for biannual budget periods, the agency continues to budget on an annual fiscal year's budget. The Urban Renewal Agency District has two separate funds. The Urban Renewal Project Fund, which accounts for tax increment revenues and includes a debt service fund for repayment of debt obligations issued to fund agency projects. As of 2023, the agency no longer carries any outstanding debt obligations, so only the Urban Renewal Project Fund is presented in this budget. The Urban Renewal Project Fund has an estimated beginning fund balance of $1,794,572. The majority of revenue comes from tax increment revenue and interest. The agency contracts with the city of Depoe Bay to provide staff to administer programs and require materials and services. In addition, the agency can contract with outside experts, including financial consultants, engineers, and attorneys. For the coming year, the budget proposes paying the city up to $25,500 for staffing, office expenses, and maintenance services. Actual costs are based on time spent by staff on urban renewal projects. The proposed administrative cost is a decrease of $65,300 for the fiscal year 2024-25. The budget continues to propose funds for grant programs that support businesses and property owners within the district. Under capital projects, the fiscal year 2026 recommended capital projects are detailed below. And I said detail below, but that's a typo. They're actually we didn't actually detail any specific projects except where it's actually in the budget. Funding will be entirely from tax increment generated in the urban renewal district. No additional debt financing is proposed. The proposed project is for engineering design for replacement of the water treatment plant. That's the main one, but there are other things included within. Any projects funded through the Urban Renewal Agency are transferred to city ownership upon completion. The proposed budget includes transfers as follows: $100,000 to the street fund to support maintenance on street services due to tourism impacts in the urban renewal area. $100,000 to the harbor fund to support maintenance and operations of the harbor due to impacts from tourism and also the urban renewal area. $20,000 to the city parks funds to assist with maintenance and upkeep of the various city parks and views within the urban renewal area. And $500,000 to the water fund to be held for construction of the new water treatment plant. Contingency, the fiscal year 2025-26 budget proposes a contingency of $500,000 with $252,072 unappropriated funds. This contingency fund can be used if the agency has unexpected costs that cannot be covered by what has been budgeted. If we use the use of contingency requires a resolution by the board or agency. Although the Depoe Bay Urban Renewal Agency is moving toward its eventual sunset, it still has financial capacity to complete many projects. This year's budget ensures that funding is provided to accomplish these major projects. We extend our sincere thanks to the budget committee members for serving our community by being a part of this vital committee. We earnestly solicit your input as we strive to create a budget that's fiscally responsible while also meeting the agency's goals and the community's needs. Thank you.
Thank you for that. In my notes here, it looks like, Fran, you submitted some requests. Do you want to go over those?
Sure. It's at the back of the, packet 2, it's in packet 2, sorry. So, we learned at the last meeting that, we're moving forward on terminating the lease with the, Robeson Brothers, and we have 2, restrooms ready to be placed. But unlike the Robeson restrooms that we've been using down at the harbor, neither of the ones that we're thinking of are handicap accessible. So what I'm suggesting is that one of those 2 restrooms be moved to another place where we want restrooms, and replace the one down by the harbor with at least one restroom that's handicap accessible. And I do not know the cost, but we have that information from when we purchased the other restrooms. And I considered it a high need, urgent need. Do you want me to go through them all before we come back to discuss?
Yeah, why don't you just kind of, go through them all, so.
Okay. The next one and the one after that regards safety, public safety along the highway on 101 for pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, people pushing strollers, etc. There's 3 PUD poles, and I gave you the name of the poles and the location down at the bottom. To ask PUD to move those poles off the sidewalk and put them in the right of way, but off the sidewalk. We do have a franchise with PUD, but I don't know when it's up, but that could be negotiation. Other than that, we'd have to pay them to move it probably. But I think it's medium important, but it is pretty hard to walk down the sideway often with 2 abreast if you have to run into the pole. And similarly, just north of Tidal Ridge, there are 4 sidewalk cuts. There used to be, anticipating driveways, but when we got the scenic lands, we don't need those sidewalk cuts anymore, and the slope is steep. So again, if you're in a wheelchair, if you're pushing a stroller, you're trying to walk abreast, it's not very safe. It's a pretty big slope down to the driveway. I think I'm not good, but I think it's 6. There's 4 of them, and I think they're 6 or 7 feet long. So to go from here to just, pouring concrete to make a safer sidewalk, I'm suggesting that, meeting an emergency. But you do have, urban renewals for public safety, and I don't know if the 1% for public safety is from the TRT, but either one of those could be used. And then finally, this regards striping for more accessible parking and signage on Highway 101. It's not a big ticket item, but it would require either city labor or contract labor. Right now, we have handicap accessible parking in parking lots that are really hard to get down to 101. And most people who come to the city go on 101. And so putting more accessible parking on 101 would be a good idea. And I'm thinking at least 2 additional parking spaces north of the bridge and 1 south of the bridge. And then the ones that we do have, make sure they're well signed and striped because they're pretty faded by now. So again, I consider that one medium priority, but it's not a hard thing to do. So those are my suggestions for urban renewal fund.
Thanks. Ray and Kim, do you guys have input on that?
We talk about the handicap accessible, that was already discussed as something we plan on doing because one is needed down at the harbor when we put the new restrooms down there, so, we were already planning on doing it. It's not being called out as a specific project, but it is included within the.
You're gonna add a third restroom or move one of the ones?
They're two separate ones, right? So we're gonna put one down there that is non-handicapped and one down there that is.
Oh, good.
So, yeah, we were already.
And then so we'll have one of those restrooms to be moved to another space. And then we'll need another handicap.
If it's, well, it depends on it, but it would have to be, depending on where it would be put, obviously it would have to have water and sewer pump to it and.
Or the Bay Street location, or,
No, the Bay Street location, we're going to put a bigger, I have not put anything in the budget for that because we're actually going for a grant, because that's gonna be a larger project. That, what we were putting down the harbor is gonna be too small for the top of Coho, and it won't be really effective at all, so. We are actually putting bigger bedrooms that have been designed, and like I said, we're going out for a grant.
It'll be full,
The full open ADA and they're right at the top of the parking thing, they'll be really nice, these ones are the nice modular ones, but they're really better designed for the temporary basis down at the harbor like we're kind of using them for.
Okay, so the first one looks like it's handled.
Yes, we're good with that one.
And then the second one was the power poles. My question there is, why don't we just have a power company do it?
Well, the power company does it, they'll charge it.
Easier to move the sidewalk.
And they'll have to go whatever ODOT requirements are, because remember, it's on Highway 101, so even if we don't, they'll do the work. So, I haven't had a chance to look at the date of the franchise agreement, when it expires, but I do know that, past experience shows that often they will do it if we tell them we need to do it, but there's no provision in there for us to get any money back. They'll charge us for it, so.
Can I ask a question about that specifically? When we did our sign, ODOT specifically told us that power poles couldn't be in the right of way. And so those power poles, since they're in the sidewalk, it would seem to me that they've got to be encroaching on the right of way. And so
We can ask ODOT.
I just think we need to do a little bit more work here to make sure that, the power poles are where they need to be in relation to what ODOT's requirement is, because the power company is gonna move them for free. I mean, they just don't do that, it's really expensive. And when we asked them about moving the one by our property, they wanted something like $20,000 to do it. So, I just
Maybe
think.
that's a better way to start, is we can start by reaching out to ODOT and say, hey, ODOT, I got power poles here, do you have a problem with that?
Yeah, are they in your right?
Because if they do, they'll be able to move them for us, so we can ask that question.
So it sounds like we need to do a little more homework on that one.
but I'd like to budget for it, because it is a public safety issue. And there's a huge amount of pedestrian traffic. It's in our, scenic lands area, it's just not right to have power poles in the middle of the sidewalk where you can't walk on the sidewalk. So anyway, I would love to have it in the budget, so we have a placeholder. Anyway, that's my thought.
We can always check with ODOT by the first step and can come back to the next urban renewal meeting and let you know, and you can make a decision at that point if you want to include it. But remember, if you make a decision, include it has to be the majority of the membership has to agree, it can't just be one or a few people, it has to be the majority.
Fran, do we know the length of the sidewalk there that these are encroaching on? Is it 50 feet, is it 100 feet, is it 500 feet?
No, I mean, the power pole's in one place.
No, but they go from here to here to here, right? So.
Oh,
There's multiple-
they're not connected.
They're not connected.
I mean, they're connected, but one's not related to the other. We could move one. I think there's enough slack in the line.
They're older existing poles, and when they added the sidewalk in the mid-70s, they just poured the sidewalk around the existing pole, got moved. So,
Has ODOT never known that they want that?
yeah, we've
they-
asked them about them in the past.
Oh, you've asked ODOT about them in the past, and what have they said?
Some of them are utility poles and not power poles, so some of them were owned by, and I don't know which ones, were owned by CenturyLink. Or, which was back then, it's been, now it's Lumen, they've had several different names, but it's the phone company.
I would just say, again, do they have right of way to do it, and is there an easement that allows them to put the pole there? That would be the
Yeah,
things that I
Well,
would.
it's definitely in the right of way, but whether or not we want them on the sidewalk in the right of way or off the sidewalk is a different issue.
It'd be cheaper to force sidewalk around them.
because ODOT's pretty good with their records, we can maybe reach out to ODOT and also an engineer with PV.
Does anybody have any other questions of staff on this particular item? Oh, okay.
Okay, at one time, because I've had friends that are handicapped who have had issues, and I had talked to Scott down at, on ODOT, that apparently they now have a committee for the handicapped, issues along Highway 101 here, and, I told myself, I'm gonna come join that. Well, I'm here to stay. So, but that, they were looking at doing those kind of things, that's probably why they're making all the changes they're making. So I don't think that would be great to find out if they'll make those changes for us here, because it's a safety issue and it affects handicapped people.
I will definitely ask the question. We'll find out, Grady, maybe Grady can take a look within the next few weeks to see exactly where the power is owned by somebody else, and then we'll verify with ODOT. They like to send people down to see things in their right of way. So we'll ask them to come down, take a look at it in the right of way, and they can take it, basically they'll tell us what they will or won't do or what we can do.
Any other questions for staff on that particular item? On the next one, it seems like it would be a similar story that we all need to talk to ODOT first.
Oh, yes,
On the driveway
anytime we are going to talk about doing anything to ODOT, no matter what it is, we have to go to them.
And that would include the ADA parking on 101.
Yes, absolutely.
So it seems to me like before we can really decide what we want to do, we need to find out what we can do, correct?
Absolutely, I don't know the answer, I know what I've been told since I've been here, particularly about the south of the bridge, and that, what I've been told is that ODOT has made it clear on two things. One, if we start asking for restriping, which is why I can't get my fog line on the seawall side, is they make us redo our parking. And they don't want slant parking. And those of you that have been here long enough should know this, because this has been coming up year after year after year. If we try to get them to do anything but keep the stripes the way they are, and the markings the way, maybe not so much marking, but the stripes for sure the way they are, they say, okay, we'll do it, but you're gonna have to go to parallel. That was a big issue from what I understand about south of the bay, south of the bridge, was that they didn't wanna do that. The other part I understand from the agreement from south of the bridge was that ODOT says, we'll do this, but now you have to maintain this section of Highway 101. And that was one of the other reasons why they pulled the plug, the previous folks pulled the plug on the south of the bridge project, because they're like, do you want to maintain Highway 101? I mean, so those are the types of things that we have to watch out, but these are all things that we can double check with ODOT about and say, okay, we wanna consider this, what does this look like? What happens if we do it, all the information on that. I hope I can get it done in a month. ODOT is not always real fast on things, but we can try.
No, I think you're right, actually, in the past, most of, well, really anything on Highway 101 and Depoe Way is governed by ODOT, so, I think all of these requests have merit, but if ODOT doesn't allow it or they can't budget for it, then we need to have a conversation with them if we wanna change anything, because we literally can't. So, I think having a conversation with them about all of these different subjects, which they are actually valid, I mean, we should have better parking, better sidewalks, better everything, but they're governed by the state, they're not governed by the city, and so we don't wanna be taking on projects that cost the city a whole bunch of money and we shouldn't be budgeting for it, because we're not even responsible for it, you know?
Councilor Massal, or no, you're not councilor anymore.
I believe that the city is responsible for the sidewalks, and is that true
No.
or not?
ODOT is responsible for the sidewalks.
So when we
On 101.
when we as a city tell a developer that they need to put a sidewalk in and it has to be X number of feet wide, isn't that a city that's doing that, not ODOT? Or is that an ODOT requirement?
Highway 101 is a public federal highway,
Absolutely.
and so it's managed by ODOT.
But the city has the 8-foot requirement for sidewalks.
Our code has a requirement, we don't get to do anything unless ODOT approves.
Right,
Okay,
we
so
can have
our-
a code all day long, but if the
plan-
higher ups don't say anything,
Our code
then we don't do
reflects
anything.
what, if ODOT, if our code is more restrictive, then they have to do our code. Versus ODOT.
Basically, the planning commission approves it, but then it goes to ODOT for their approval.
Right, so we can restrict everything we want on our sidewalks, but ultimately it's up to ODOT to decide if we can do those things.
But we would do them as a city, not ODOT doing them, right? So I guess where I'm trying to
No, the
get to is
developer
would. The
who's
developer-
funding.
The developer does.
Okay, so in the case of the cutouts that are by tidal rates, that's on our scenic land now, and is that a city responsibility if that sidewalk were to fail or get cracked or broken or whatever, because there's no other land ownership there, it's city
It
scenic.
belongs to the state,
Yeah.
and
We
so
would have to go
if
to
anything
ODOT.
happens, someone would have to sue the state, even if we have all of these ordinances and rules in place. We don't have jurisdiction over the sidewalk.
If we had a crack, let's say we did have a big old crack that was gonna, what would we do? Go to ODOT and say, we wanna replace this. And they would say, okay, do the permitting, make sure whatever we wanna do, but we would have to pay for it unless we could get ODOT to do it. But the bottom line is if it touches ODOT, we have to go to ODOT.
Okay, so
Whether or
if,
not they pay for it, they don't really have a budget right now, so I'm not sure what they would do.
so if it belongs to ODOT and ODOT should be fixing it,
They
doesn't
should,
make
but they
sense.
Yeah.
But doesn't it make sense that that's where we should go, is to
Right,
ODOT?
they should, but they don't, but if we pay for it and fix it and something happens, then it's on
Right.
us.
And so therein lies the concern, and I
Right.
just know that ODOT was sued, which is why they're doing all this handicap work, from Lincoln Beach
Right.
North, is they were sued, they lost the lawsuit, and they're doing handicap work. All of these things are related to handicap accessibility.
They are.
They're not
So-
in what the settlement agreement for ODOT, with ODOT. They won't do the grants, but that moving power poles and doing highway cuts, that's not part of what the settlement agreement is about.
Yeah, it's
We got
catch
it.
22, I
Yeah.
mean, you kind of, we're in a bad spot,
Always ask.
but we can you're right, we can always ask,
Well,
because,
I'm just gonna say, if they're responsible for it and somebody gets hurt, then they would go after ODOT, not us,
Correct.
because, and so we can point out
but
to
if we
ODOT.
modified the sidewalk, or the city modified the sidewalk and
Right.
somebody got hurt, even if they were ADA compliant, they could still sue us because we modified the sidewalk.
Correct, so where I'm going with this is letting ODOT know that there are these points on Highway 101 here in Depot Bay that are not ADA friendly, and you've already gone through a lawsuit once, maybe you should consider fixing them so you don't have another
Right,
lawsuit.
and that's why I think contacting ODOT and making it clear that like, this is where we're at, so you guys need to do something about it.
Well,
But we shouldn't spend money on it, we should let them spend money.
they're not gonna do that, and it's still a hazard, and if we do the sidewalk to ODOT specs, that's how we minimize our liability.
I think we have enough liability issues going on in the city that we don't need to spend money to create more. I think that if ODOT will pay for it, then they should, and if they won't pay for it, then unfortunately, you have to wait and see if something bad happens, but the thing with lawsuits is that if we do something, and even if we do it to their specs, what they're gonna come back and say legally is, well, yeah, you did it to all their specs, but you didn't get their permission.
Well, we should get rid of the commission.
Councilor Beasley, you put your hand up a while back. Do you still have a question?
It was just procedural. Are we going to be discussing other projects or other ideas?
These were the only projects that were submitted.
Will we be able to bring something up?
As far as I know,
A brand new
a
project,
brand new
I
project.
asked for people to submit their
That's
projects. You can bring it up, but
Well, I think this is a budget committee meeting, so maybe we should talk about projects that have already been, not just from council members, but what is
Okay,
set in the budget, right?
so why don't we get through these first? from what I've heard, I think we all want an answer from ODOT before we move forward with putting any of these in the budget, am I correct? And see what that's going to be done this. Okay, it sounds to me like we'll wait and
Yeah, we'll-
revisit these.
So we'll
Who's
have,
going to do that? Who's going to?
Do you need a show of hands on that, or?
this, why don't we just go ahead and do that, just make sure everybody's in agreement of doing the work,
Just show your hand if you're in favor of researching before we move forward on that.
Okay, yeah, let me sure. Thank you.
And now, can you please review the budget?
Yes, so, whereas it's gonna be different with the city budget for tonight though, because the urban renewal is a small budget. Because we didn't have any other specific projects identified in here. Brady and I, the staff kind of looked at, what the city needs are, what our priorities are. And kind of looked at to see what we could do within the urban renewal agency is fitting with under what the goals of the urban renewal agency is. And this is what we came up with. First, I just realized, I don't know how this happened, but, look at page of that packet that you got, page 2 of 3, and at the top it says resources. Somehow the resources came at the wrong place. This is very strange. Did everybody find it? It's a short half page, but looks like this. Everybody got it? Stapled it, thank you.
Where is it in the binder?
Staple, no, it's in the front of the binder, there's some staple pages. One of them that has the budget message, there you go. He said right in the middle, he said in the middle, right? It doesn't belong in the middle. Okay, so resources, I just wanted to point out on here is that what we have, and that's based on our current bank statement, is we have, that 1,794,572,000. We're estimating, she's still settling the numbers on the levy taxes, but we're still estimating around that amount. And interest, we're still settling on that, but based on what our actuals are, you can see where we're at on that. So per everybody's request, there is that fiscal year 24-25 column to the left. So, just make sure everybody sees that and you can see where we're at on that. So I didn't increase by very much of what we're gonna get in taxes because it's been tracking pretty close to the same, so. So that's resources. Then the next one, is the, I think it's should be the requirements, nope, wrong one. The one that says requirements summary, at the bottom it says page 3 of 3 in that same packet. Okay, again, underneath there, on the left side, where it has the list of the items, did everybody find it? I'm sorry, did everybody find it?
Last page, it's like.
Last page stapled, thank you. It says actuals 24-25. Just wanna make sure you see that. City costs that were allocated there was, the majority of that was my time, and I will tell you that I wasn't tracking it in detail. So I just estimated a paycheck just to figure out this is where I put my hours in. I'm thinking and hoping that we do more urban renewal agencies, so we'll see some more personnel costs. You can see that I increased a little bit, especially if we look at the Navy banner, Navy administering that grant program. It would include costs for Brady and his crew as well. Under materials and services, professional services, again, these are just estimates in case we do some more things with urban renewal. As you know, it's just an estimate. If it gets spent, it gets spent. We just don't wanna go over that. So, office expenses, just a few things to apply to that. Maintenance Highway 101 downtown. We have a gentleman that we have do some maintenance for us along that area, particularly along the scenic land. So I kind of split the funds for him to maintain that between the urban renewal budget and the city budget. So that's primarily what that is. And then at the bottom, as I said, we need to do design and engineering next year. And I just estimated moving the 300,000 to get that design engineering done on the water treatment plant. So, which I asked a question about how far can we realistically put this off? And what did he tell us that what's gonna happen, because the reason to do the project they were gonna do was because the filters foundation failed, right? So the prognosis was not very good on how long we can keep this going without doing something. Few years.
Yeah, two to 2.5.
Yeah, so what happens is when the filters start failing, we start getting in trouble with DEQ. And we start putting our drinking water at risk. So we have to make this more of making sure we start getting money in there to do that. This will take care of the design and engineering this year.
Yeah, it'd be good to have another urban renewal meeting or work session, because we just have the new properties along 101. I think we're intending to put them in the urban renewal area, and then we want the engineering, so professional services line item to perhaps be increased, so we can, first of all, decide what we want to do with it. Housing, for example, and if we want to know what the system development charges would be, if we want to incentivize, workforce housing, for example. So I think there's some professional services line item that we really need to beef up here.
We can do that. I mean, part of that can also come out of the city budget under professional services that I've already budgeted for. But if we want to throw some more money in there, the budget committee can make that recommendation as long as the majority agrees.
Are we legally able to budget for properties that are not in the district?
I would say no at this point.
We can't, they are going to be they've already motioned to approve the putting that in the district. You've already did? I'm pretty sure you did.
Can we verify that?
I can verify that. We can look at, let's put maybe a temporary tentative placeholder in there.
I think what would happen was, you were gonna calculate, and remember,
amount.
that
And we thought,
it was within it, so then it was already
Yes.
based on if it was under the amount we could do, that we brought it into the original.
yes, I'm already working on the documents to do that.
Why don't we let you finish, or did you have more in mind?
Not on this one, just on the second one under requirements. The only thing under requirements I just wanna point out in here is the beautification grant program. We budgeted 40,000 in it last year, but we didn't use it. I just put that in there in case you wanna beef up that program a little bit more, as an option whether every renewal agency would wanna do it. And the rest of them were just transfers, as I noted, to the harbor fund, the street fund, and the city parks fund, as well as the, moving for the water treatment plant,
So,
I have a question. The mechanics of paying the city for the staff time and office and maintenance, is that a transfer to this general fund?
No, we would, yes, it would actually, that's a good point, it should actually be a transfer, you're right, I missed that.
Well, it doesn't have to show up as transfer here, but it should show up as transfer on the income side of the city budget.
Absolutely,
And
and it does, I believe, I thought it did under the urban.
I didn't see
gave
it.
you a transfer.
we can look for it later, but I didn't see it.
Is it missing? Okay.
Yeah, it's line item number 23 on the page that's not
Okay.
numbered.
I think, correct, it would need to come out of there. There's two ways we could do this. We could actually write a check from the Urban Renewal Agency account and deposit it into the general fund, which would probably be easier than trying to do it now. So we're gonna do that. That's how we're gonna do it. So, there we go.
That's my idea.
I was thinking transferring, I mean, it's probably gonna be easier to do it that way. I will look that up to verify in the meantime to see if it would be easier one way. I'll check with Jenny. And if it's easier, just run a check and then just deposit the check for any tracking we do, we'll
Yeah,
settle at
and-
the end of the year.
And Bill, your comment about line 23 on the requirement summary page, is that what you were looking at, the transfer to the
The
general fund?
transfer,
If you show something there, you double counted it, because it's already a requirement in the expense line. So where it needs to show up is on the income side of the city budget.
Well, it would under personal services, and that's where I'll show it. So it's coming in as a transfer from Urban Renewal.
But
Yes.
yeah, I don't see it under transfers in from other funds.
Under this, under the.
On the general fund, we get to it on the budget, this can be fixed in the city budget next
So
meeting.
I have a question, and bear with me, I know this, but, we are a small town, so is there a rule or some sort of acting, whatever, charter ordinance, whatever you wanna call it, that requires us to have all these different funds. We only have 1,100 people that live in this town.
Yes.
So why do we have a general fund and several sub funds underneath it? I mean,
Oregon public law, Oregon budget law requires us to have funds.
requires us to have different budget funds.
Right,
Okay,
because,
how many?
as many as we need, or as few as we need.
So we could have none.
No, you have to have at least a water and sewer, you have to have these proprietary funds,
Okay.
because the twins can't mix, same thing with
So
harbor.
you need to have a water sewer,
Mhm.
okay?
You wanna
and
have a
general.
harbor, because it's a.
So
proprietary.
where in the Oregon state law does it say we have to have a harbor fund?
It doesn't tell you what funds you have to have, you need as many funds as it can to do the business. And let's talk about that under city, and I will get you information on that.
No, and I'm just trying to like broaden the horizon here because I feel like we have all these different funds with all these different budgets, but we are allocating payroll funds. We're allocating different we're pulling money out of all these different places and saying, oh, this is for this, but there's no real way to track it.
Yeah, they
And
track
so-
it. They
Oh,
track
it's
it.
tracked in the budget.
Well, it's not well tracked.
Yes, it is, it's tracked on the.
I'm still talking, thank you. If most of these city employees are on a salary and they're not on an hourly wage, then how do you track it?
So I will do if we start, Urban Renewal hasn't had a lot of activity lately. We start having activity, I actually found a spreadsheet that used to be kept by previous people to track how much time. When they fill out their timesheets, when we fill out our timesheets, we will note how much time we spend in Urban Renewal, just like
Right,
we
but
do
if
for streets.
you are on, like, if you are great, whoever, okay, if you're on a salary, why are you tracking your time? You're getting paid for whatever you do.
For purposes like this.
Right, but
Plus, to show truest cost we possibly can attributed to the
Right,
general fund.
right, but again, you're saying that we're on a salary and you're trying to track it hourly, but you're also saying we're required to have different spaces for all of these different
Okay,
funds,
wait,
but there's no, I'm not done. But you're also saying that you don't have to have a minimum requirement of how many funds or a maximum requirement of how many different funds you have to have. So why are these categories allocated the way that they are?
Because they have to be per Oregon budget law.
Right, but you're saying, I said, how many do we have to have and what do they need to include? So water sewer makes sense.
When I did the training, we talked about the various different funds and why they have to be split out the way that they were.
Right, but like, there's
I would like to
however
ask
many cities in
Shelley-
Oregon that don't have harbors. There's so many cities in Oregon that don't have a TRT fund.
Right,
So why are they split out in the way that they are?
that is through Oregon budget law per the kind of fund we have. Proprietary, enterprise,
Okay,
general, and operating.
okay,
And
and
I
that
believe,
that makes sense. I'm just trying to understand why we have so many different funds
Oh, I
and why
wish we
some
didn't
have
have to have
deficits and
so
ones
many.
are okay.
I wish
And why
did-
we can transfer funds in and out of certain places, but we can't transfer them to here without having a deficit, but we can transfer them to here, but we have all this leftover money. That's what doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, I'm not following that. The way that I did the budget was to show that some points at harbor, for example, let's talk about the harbor. We know that it's been set, pardon me. This is a urban
This
renewal
is
budget
urban
committee.
renewal. Right.
We should be focusing
I know
only
that,
on
that's
urban
where I was
renewal
going.
budget.
Did you have a question regarding the?
It wasn't a question, it was a comment illustrating how staff build across these things. The city pays a salary, and there's an hourly rate embedded in that salary. There's also benefits and overhead that goes on top of that, so what they bill out to these other funds is probably not the hourly rate paid.
Right.
It's a billing rate, and lawyers and accountants do this kind of stuff all the time, we get paid salaries, we bill clients for all sorts of stuff. And that's
Right,
just
and
how we track our time, so
And I
that's,
understand that, I would just like to see a breakdown of how that comes across instead of somebody saying, okay, we put this many hours into this fund, this many hours into this fund, and this many. How does that work when you're paying people a salary?
it's a billing rate, it's
Right.
like how, you know, when
Do
you're
we
working
have
on.
an accountant right now that's doing that?
We
Because I-
don't need an accountant to decide how payroll fund, how staff are allocated. We know the majority of what our work does, and that was what that payroll allocation
But I feel like
She
we
should
need
back
an
to
accountant to
the
be able to.
Yeah, but again, I'm sorry, but we are an urban renewal, we have to focus on urban renewal.
Okay, so let's talk about urban renewal allocation of employee funds. So who, we can't just say, okay, this person's getting paid this much, this person's getting, we're doing this much time to this. So why do we not have an accountant that is analyzing where these funds should go for urban renewal and how much salary we're paying to the people that work for the city?
The salary is set by the city council, based on a salary search study that we did, so they determine what that is. Brady and I determine, and we have our staff track for time as to whether they work, whatever they work on. So if they work on something that they're doing an urban renewal, when my bills come in, I know who's urban renewal because I know what they're doing, and so we get paid on that. We are going to have an accountant at some point, but they will review the budget, but we are the city and we determine where we place our revenue, or excuse me, where our payroll is allocated. So as far as this is concerned, because we didn't track any time, which we will going forward, starting with the new urban renewal budget, we will track what we spend and what we take per our hourly rate or billing rate, as Mr. Whitmire said. We'll say we did this, I got ready for the urban renewal budget committee meeting, I got ready for the urban renewal meeting. I took an hour, Carla took 2 hours. My hourly rate plus benefits is, her hourly rate plus benefits is, we have all that information.
I understand, I'm not trying to undermine anything that you're trying to say, I'm just a little bit concerned that we don't currently have an accountant that is analyzing that and allocating and understanding where that can go and how it affects the rest of our budget, because it's hard to determine and come up with a city budget if we don't have an accountant that can say, hey, you know, maybe you need to do a little bit more here, or you need to do less here, things like that.
Accountants don't decide that. That is not their job, that is your job and the council's job.
Right, but accountants are supposed to take what you're doing with your money and make it something that people can read. And
Absolutely, pardon me, that is absolutely not true. Look at any number of city budget, and I don't think any of them you can read.
none of us in this room are accountants that I'm aware of.
Can we really honestly need to stay on track?
And I would love to have a
appreciate-
one-on-one discussion with you about
That would
this.
be great. Spending time with you, you will learn a lot about how accounting.
Municipal budgeting
Yeah, I
and
don't know much
financials
about
is
what
not
comes
the
to
same
Go
as
ahead,
private.
Can
Um,
I just do a
one
couple general
quick-
questions about this budget?
That would be fine. Before you do that, we do have some projects that we do want to talk about. So we really do want to have another urban renewal meeting. One of them is Kent Street. We gotta figure out if it's in the urban renewal district or not. You know, I can't remember. I know we wanted to vote on that and we didn't.
You
Um,
did, actually.
We did, okay, so it truly is.
Well,
So we wanna explore that. That's a huge piece of commercial property that was gifted to us. We paid nothing for it. Now we're not getting any taxes on it. But what we wanna do is roll it into the urban renewal plan so that we can do something really constructive with it, whatever that is. As a group, as a community, we need to decide. The other really big thing, just so that you know about this, is the fish plant is now empty. The fish plant has had a pretty thorough inspection done on it, which is part of the public information packet a couple meetings ago. But I would like to see us explore opportunities for that particular property. I don't know what that looks like, but I'd like for us to explore it. So those were my things about what I wanted to talk about as we have another meeting. So right now, we probably need to open it to public comment.
Feel that's something you wanted to.
Yeah, I would like to clarify that in the budget message, it specifically says that projects that are funded through the Urban Renewal Agency are transferred to city ownership.
Correct.
And there is a line item in the budget that is for beautification projects, beautification grant program. And so I, as an owner of a property that's in the urban renewal district, would not want to get a beautification grant because I'm not gonna turn ownership of my property or the pieces that were done over to the urban renewal agency.
It doesn't apply to grants.
Yeah.
It doesn't apply.
But it doesn't say
It's
that,
not-
and so
Right, it's
I'm
not a
just,
project.
it was a concern of mine, and then,
Maybe in the grant application, we could adjust.
We can
that.
certainly clarify that.
and then the only other concern that I had about this particular budget is it just seems to me that, when you have a $500,000 contingency, it's way too much of a contingency number. I mean, that we're basically saying, as a budget committee, let's just give the urban renewal agency $500,000 that they can decide to do with whatever they want to do with it. And I just have I think that number should be much less than that, and if it needs to be that large, the budget committee should be reconvened to discuss
That's for projects that haven't come in on that.
I'm sorry?
That's for projects that haven't come in on that.
That's correct. I mean, but we as a city work on an annual budget, and if we need to spend an additional $500,000 out of what is $2 million, we're spending a quarter of that money. I think the city should have, the people on this committee should have an opportunity to say where that $250,000 is, or $500,000 in this case is going.
That is not your role. Your role is not to decide for the city what projects they should undertake.
But it is my role to decide whether there should be $500,000 in a contingency
You
or
can
not.
make recommendations, yes.
And so I'm just saying, as a budget committee, this seems like an awful large number that would go to the city council or whoever to decide, you know what, we wanna spend the $500,000 contingency number and not go through the budget committee process.
That's why I want to have another meeting with the agency.
That's,
Right,
those
so
are the
to
two
set
comments
those
I have.
projects, right, because the way operating contingency works is it's really supposed to be used as a place, a savings account, if you will, for an emergency. However, if we put it in there and it's not allocated to something else, and you decide later you wanna take it out, you have to do a resolution, it's not hard to do, but you just have to do a resolution. But the only way that I can keep it out of the operating contingency is to allocate it to something. So that would be up to the urban renewal agency to decide what that would be.
Well, and if a project comes up, I would just say, if our unappropriated funds number was a $700,000 number and you only had $70,000 in operating contingency, how do you get use of those funds that are in unappropriated? You would reconvene the budget committee, right, to
Actually, those are much more harder to pull out of unappropriated, because those are required more than ordinance adjusting those, and it requires usually public hearings.
correct, and I guess that's where I was going with that. Is
Whereas a lot of people put things in contingency because it's easier to move out.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, is I don't think it should be in contingency, I think it should go through the public hearing process when you're planning to spend $500,000 on something.
Okay, Council Beasley?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to second your idea about the discussion on the fish plant. I think in the light of all these discussions about getting rid of city services, whether it's the fueling station or, I just think these are important assets that we have to take into consideration in this budget, so thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, we are going to go to the open it for public comment at this point. This is public comment regarding the urban renewal budget. So does anybody have any comment either in the room or online?
Nobody online?
Okay then. I believe we adjourn next, is that correct?
And as long as the budget committee doesn't have anything else to talk about?
So we've all agreed that the projects that Fran brought forward need to be explored some more, so we can see if they're feasible. We've all agreed that we want to meet on potential other projects. So
Should we set the date
we
now?
can set, what's your pleasure?
Pardon me, the next budget committee meeting is May 15th. If the urban renewal agency wants to convene, the urban renewal agency chair has to set a meeting but not here. This is not the final place to do that.
I'll work with you on setting the date.
Okay, just off the top of my head, it'd be nice to do it before the council meeting, maybe, next week? No?
That would be up to the chair.
Okay,
That would be up to the urban renewal agency chair.
okay, that's,
Give it an invitation.
I do think that time is available, so there you go.
okay, so at 6:55, we're going to go ahead and adjourn the urban renewal, budget meeting. Does anybody want to take a little break?
No, I do. I'm going to stop the recording and then we'll start back up.